guys, I'm Subhashini, an artist, illustrator and surface designer. I love creating happy and joyful art. Thank you so much for joining me for this special class with Spoonflower. Together we are going to paint this fun holiday card. So grab your supplies and let's get started. Let's see some of the materials that we need for painting our card. We need an A4 watercolor paper, which is 300 GSM. And we need a watercolor paint set. And we need a water container for washing our brushes and mixing the colors. Then we need a rag cloth or a paper towel. We need round brushes of size 2, 4 and 8. We also need a rigger brush. If you don't have a rigger brush, you can use a small brush like size 1, which we'll be using for adding thin lines and tiny details. Then we need a scoring tool, which is totally optional, but scoring your paper helps you make a clean fold. If you don't have a scoring tool, you can use a ballpoint pen which ran out of ink. I'll show you a simple trick to score the paper and make a card. Place a ruler on the midpoint of your A4 watercolor paper. Then using the scoring tool, we're going to make a groove in the middle of the paper. Now this will be the inside of the card. Apply slight pressure and score a couple of times until you have a groove. Then flip over the card and gently fold it. You can see that we have got a nice clean fold. And then you can use a bone folder to make the crease even more clean and crisp. And now our card looks perfect. Before we start our class project, let's practice some of the botanicals that we'll use for our wreath. I'm starting by drawing a stem using the tip of my brush, and if you apply a little pressure, you'll get broad strokes like that, and you can manipulate your brush to make different shapes. And make sure to have a variety of greens in your leaves. You can go back in with a darker color and add some textures and details. Like that. And we have painted a nice little leafy branch. Next I'm going to paint a couple of holly leaves. We're going to add a lot of holly leaves to our wreath. So I'll just show you how to paint a holly leaf. All you have to do is paint a nice scallopy edges and then using it as a guide, just fill the inside with a watery green. As you can see, it's very quick and easy. I'm going to repeat the same method and draw another holly leaf, drawing a scallopy edge and then fill it. You can add a center line if you want. Next we are going to paint a simple poinsettia. I'm just using my tip of my brush and adding some yellow dots to the page. Then grabbing some red and starting from the tip and applying slight pressure, you'll be able to make nice petal shapes. I'm making sure my poinsettia has a nice variety of petals. Some are darker and some are lighter. I want the petals to be a little broader. And adding some more dots to the center. And next, using the rigger brush, I am drawing a pine leaf. It is so easy to paint thin and long lines using the rigger brush, so I highly recommend it. Now using the same brush, let me draw a branch of winterberry, just super thin line, and add some dots using your round brush. And that's it. It's super simple. And you can even paint some imaginary florals. You can use your round brush to create a blotchy abstract shape and then add a dark center. Finally, I'm painting a mistletoe. Their leaves are long, curvy, and they grow in pairs, almost looking like maple seed pod. If you want, you can practice other winter botanicals like snowberries, juniper berries, and rosemaries, pine cones, etc. We will also be painting a winter bird in the middle of the wreath, so if you want to sketch the bird before painting, please use this as a reference. Now that we have done our warm-up, let's move on to the class project. We're going to mix a few shades of red. My paint set has permanent rose, alizarin crimson, and Winsor red. So if you need a few shades of red, you can go ahead and mix a little bit of brown or blue to your reds. So it'll give you a variety of reds. I'm going to start by painting the head of the bird. So like I said, you can refer to the outline that I have shared. I have painted a nice round head and for the wings, I'm gonna go ahead and mix a little bit of blue and green to make a nice frosty blue. Now let's paint his wing. If you notice, I'm using my large brush and just filling in just painting the shape of the wing. So this is where the large brushes are so helpful to cover the large areas. So I'm mixing a little bit of red and painting the belly part. I'm keeping it a little bit fatter. So this is a fun, quirky bird. You need not worry about it not being realistic. I see some of my red bleeding into the blue, making a beautiful blend. So now let's paint the tail. I'm taking a different shade of red and making a few flecks. If you want, you can play with the shape of the tail. Maybe you can make it, you can give a nice V-shaped tail at the end. It's totally up to you and you can get more creative with the tail. Now I'm gonna add some textures to the body. My paint is still wet, so I'm taking a darker red and adding a little bit of textures by dabbing my brush on the belly area. You can do the same with for the wing. You can mix a darker bluish green and just make some marks on the wing. So give it a nice little texture like that. You can also get creative and add some leaves and paint some flowers on the wing if you want. Now I'm mixing a little bit of burnt umber and Payne's grey to mix a darker color for painting the legs of our bird. So I'm drawing some little stick legs and adding the feet. Just keeping it simple and basic. I'm just tweaking it a little bit and moving on to adding the eye. So you just have to paint a dot using the same darker color and that's it. Then we are going to paint a little triangle for the beak here. Just a super simple pointed shape. And we got a little beak. You can go ahead and add some detail to the tail to make it more interesting. And now comes the fun part. We are going to paint our wreath. For that, I'm going to mix a few shades of green from my palette. I have sap green, viridian green and olive green in this set. So if you want to make it a little bluish, you can add blue, and if you want to make it a little darker, you can add some brown. So I'm going to paint a circular shape. I'm using my thin brush and drawing a circular shape. It need not be perfect. I'm not going to worry about it. So I'm just going to get the basic shape of the wreath. And we're going to add all sorts of botanicals to decorate our wreath. I'm grabbing a little bit of orange and some yellow to paint the center of poinsettia. Now I'm switching to the larger brush and I'm going to paint the petals of our poinsettia. Nice pointy petals. You can pick a different shade of red every time you reach the palette. Just a few nice and pointy leaves. And I'm going to add a darker shade of red here. Now let's mix some bluish green and paint some holly leaves. So I'm just drawing the outline of the holly leaf. The holly leaf has pointy edges like that, and I'm just getting the shape right. And then I'm going to fill in the shape with some watered down paint. And then let's add a really watery leaf and dab a little darker green. And let me grab this really dark green and add a little leaf here. Now I'm painting a little sprig here, and I'm using a different shades of green for this. And let's grab some wintry blue and add a nice rounded leaf here. I love how this part of the wreath turned lovely. So I'm grabbing some yellow ochre and I'm gonna draw some dried sprigs. Draw the center and just do the flicks to make nice little sprig. So the same way I'm going to add 2 more sprigs to our wreath. Just keeping it random. I'm painting the third one. And now I want to add a nice blotchy flower here. I'm just using the side of my brush and it's keeping it loose and dabbing the center with a darker color. And now I'm mixing an orangish red to add a poinsettia to our circle. I'm going for a slightly different way. I'm painting the petals first and then I'll be adding the center. So pick a darker color and add some dots to the center to complete the flower. I'm going to add a couple more tiny flowers to the wreath so that it looks balanced. I'm adding a simple 3-petaled flower. So you can add as many as you want, but make sure it's nicely balanced. Now that we have finished our flowers, let's move on to adding more foliages to the wreath. I'm painting a simple stem with leaves. This could be boxwood leaves or eucalyptus leaves. I'm just keeping it simple. I'm using a watery brush to pull some paint to make some nice transparent leaves. I'm finishing this up and moving on to add some more green foliages down here. Just a little sprig. And adding some dark spots to add contrast. You can use the same method and add some more sprigs along the circle. All you need to do is, using the tip of your brush, just loosely paint these sprigs. And I'm adding one more boxwood kind of stem here, just to make a nice balance and make the wreath look more unified. Now let's add some more holly leaves to our wreath. So I'm gonna do the outline and fill it with watery paint. Some can be small and some can be big. So make sure you have a nice variety of holly leaves around the wreath. So this one is done with a bit darker green, making the edges pointy. Now let's add one more here and fill the space. Now here comes the fun part. I'm mixing a rich shade of brown to paint some winterberry branches, and this is gonna make our wreath so festive. I'm using my rigger brush for this. It gives you a nice long thin lines. This is one of my favorite brushes. This helps you paint the long thin lines so confidently. I love how the wreath is taking shape once we added these branches. And just a last one in this little gap. Now let's grab the reds from our palette and start painting the berries. Just using the tip of your brush, you can paint nice round berries. If you add extra water, it will give a transparent look and you'll get a light colored berries, and if you add more pigment you'll get dark colored berries, so you can give a nice variation. You can make some tiny and some a little big. And you can see adding these berries making our wreath so festive, and it gives it a more finished look. So we have got different shades of red berries here, from light to a deeper burgundy. I love how our wreath looks now, more connected with nice amount of contrast. Now these berries totally give the holiday feels. I feel this part is missing some greens, so I'm gonna mix some greens and add some leaves. We have a nice range of greens here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and add some simple leaves and make the wreath more denser. You can even add different elements to your wreath like ornaments and bells. You can even add other winter botanicals like pine cones, rosemaries and junipers. Let me add a small stem with leaves here. I still feel this top right area is missing something, so I'm going to go ahead and add a tiny winterberry branch and make the wreath look more circular. And then the final thing you can do is to take a step back and see if any areas need more botanicals to make our wreath more fuller. And with this final holly leaf, we are all done with our wreath. Now let's add a cute little beanie hat to our bird. So I'm using a frosty blue for this. And now switching the color to red and adding a nice rounded triangle. And let's add a tiny pom-pom. And draw some tiny lines pointing out. It's so simple and easy. Look how cute our birdie looks. You can write sweet holiday messages inside and give it to your loved ones. Thank you so much for joining me today for painting this card. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Please share your artwork and tag me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is subhashini.artfactory. I cannot wait to see what you create.